Speaker. Well, I'm pleased to rise today to speak on this very important bill. This bill has the opportunity to further support our community as we deal with the economic challenges of this year. I support many of the measures in this bill today, and I know they will make a significant difference to people in my electorate who are struggling. Many people have told me the difference the first two economic support payments made to them. And I also know from my many months of visiting many hundreds of local businesses that it made a difference to our local economy too. When people have enough money to get by, when they aren't rationing their food to pay their bills, they might go to their local butcher, their baker or small grocer rather than trying to save at the bigger stores. They might spend money on fresh vegetables for once. What a treat. They can spend where they couldn't before, and that helps local businesses. I am also pleased to see concessions to the paid work test for young people to demonstrate independence for youth allowance and ab-study purposes. Young people in my electorate have had their income and their ability to work even more crushed than many of their peers around the country. When we lost the summer trade during the bushfires this year, it hit young people particularly hard. They weren't able to work in their local cafe, at the local pub, because there were no customers. No customers means no shifts, and when many rely on this income to get them through the year, that can be particularly tough. Another aspect of this bill that I find particularly encouraging are the temporary incentives to encourage young people to undertake seasonal agricultural work during the upcoming harvest season. A student claiming youth allowance can be deemed independent if they earn $15,000 through employment in the agricultural industry between 30th of November this year and 31 December next year. My electorate on the New South Wales South Coast is famous for our food and wine, our locally grown produce. Without the usual influx of international backpackers who are renowned for spending a harvest or two working on local farms, many farmers were feeling concerned about how they would get through this year. I know that many of our local farmers will be grateful for this small incentive to encourage more young people onto their farms. I do worry a little bit, though, as this bill doesn't address some of the structural issues that prevent local young people from working on these farms, issues like public transport, for one. But still, a positive move nonetheless. Deputy Speaker, I also welcome the changes to paid parental leave, and particularly the changes to improve payments for parents with a stillborn child. The loss of a child, at any point, is heartbreaking and difficult to fathom, and I am pleased to see additional support being provided to parents during what is already a very difficult time for them. Labor has been calling for these changes for some time, and we welcome it now. Deputy Speaker, while there are many measures that I welcome in this bill, as I have just outlined, I also want to reflect on what this bill does not do. I am disappointed to say, once again, that this bill represents another missed opportunity by the government to fix some of its errors so far in responding to the pandemic. Once again, our pensioners are being left behind, forgotten by this government, who time and time again have cut their payments and turned their back on them. Pensioners that are facing increasing health costs as a result of the pandemic, who have lost super, lost savings. Pensioners who have struggled to get by and who feel like they have been left behind by this government. This is hurting real people in my electorate. Peter from Churros Head wrote to me only this month. Peter said, and I quote, "The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has seen us all scrambling to survive. My problem is in regard to the people the government have missed, self-funded retirees. Before you think, yes, the rich people of Australia, let me give you an example," he says. "I belong to this cohort. I retired at age 60 after 40 years of full-time work. For the past 5 years, I have lived below the poverty line. My superannuated pension is barely sufficient, given I pay rent that entails approximately 60% of my income. While I'm sure there are many permutations out there in the real world, I feel I've been punished for retiring early, even after 40 years of work." That's Peter's story. Heartbreaking to hear, but Peter is not alone. Jeff from Maringo was receiving a part pension. During the bushfires, he and his wife were evacuated 4 times. They lost power for days, had their water supply compromised and lost the contents of their fridge and freezer. So in February, they applied for the $1,000 disaster support payment. And Jeff was promptly kicked off the pension for doing so, along with all his concessions. Now, I was able to help Jeff resolve this issue and reinstate his pension. But in the meantime, he missed out on his concessions for car registration, prescriptions and his rates, costing him much more than $1,000. What a cruel and heartless thing to go through. First the bushfires, and then having to fight to get help and keep his pension. Deputy Speaker, many people have told me how they feel the government discriminates against self-funded retirees and those receiving part pensions. Take, for example, the deeming rates. Deeming rates are used to determine how much pensioners earn from their secured financial assets, typically their savings, to determine their eligibility for the pension. The upper deeming rate is 2.25%. With the cash rate nearing 0%, it is really difficult to see how pensioners could reasonably be earning 2.25% on their savings. This is simply unreasonable and unrealistic of the government, and it is hurting pensioners in our community. The government's record on helping pensioners is not exactly rosy. Since being elected in 2014, they have tried to cut pension indexation, which would have forced pensioners to live on $80 a week less within 10 years. They cut $1 billion from pensioner concessions, axed the $900 senior supplement to self-funded retirees receiving the Commonwealth Seniors Healthcare Card. They tried to reset deeming rate thresholds that would have seen 500,000 part pensioners made worse off. They cut the pension to around 370,000 pensioners by as much as $12,000 a year by changing the pension asset test. They tried to cut the pension for over 1.5 million Australians by scrapping the energy supplement for new pensioners. Attack after attack after attack. And now no real help under this bill for them. No real help in the budget, no real help to deal with a pandemic. The economic support payments are welcome, Deputy Speaker, but the simple truth is it isn't enough. Deputy Speaker, another lost opportunity in this bill is the opportunity to permanently increase JobSeeker. There is no argument about this anymore. We know it is true. $40 a day is not enough to live on. $40 a day forces local people in our communities to live below the poverty line. In my electorate of Gilmore, there are more than 10,000 people receiving JobSeeker and Youth Allowance. That's more than 4,000 additional recipients than December last year. The Prime Minister has said that if you are good at your job, then you'll get a job. But the reality is that there are not enough jobs for everyone. That is a fact. And in regional areas, it is even more true. It doesn't matter how good you are at your job. When you're competing with hundreds of applicants and there aren't enough jobs to go around, people will be left behind. Linda from Sanctuary Point says, and I quote, "I currently am on Newstart JobSeeker and have been for 3 years after sustaining an injury. Centrelink say that although I have lower limb disablement, I can do 15 hours work, therefore I cannot receive a disability pension. It is very difficult to find appropriate employment," she says. "Therefore, once I have paid weekly rent of $270, I am left with $50, which covers minimal food and bills. Just forget it. It's not that I don't want to pay that. There is no money left from my Newstart." Of course Newstart desperately needs to be increased, Linda says. Julie from St George's Basin had some powerful words on this issue when she wrote to me back in May. I want to thank Julie for sharing her story with me of how she came to be on Newstart, now JobSeeker. After a hard life struggling to raise her children and get by as a single parent, life took a turn and she had to ask for help. I want to share Julie's story in her own words because it is so powerful. Julie says, and I quote, I feel the stigma and the shame around being unemployed is the fault of the government. Government do not want to have to pay people to do nothing, and that is understandable. However, there are only a small percentage of people on benefits that want to be on benefits. I am not here to speak on their behalf. I am here to speak on behalf of the unfortunate cases, the battlers, the struggling students, the traumatised and suffering, the ageing and the disempowered. This group are the majority that have been affected by the crippling Newstart system. The increase has absolutely helped many through the pandemic and has helped many put and keep a roof over their heads, pay bills and eat more regularly. My cholesterol has increased from eating starchy foods because they were cheap, but lately I have been able to buy more fresh fruit and vegetables. At my age, and needing to go on unemployment benefits has been one of the most depressing stages of my life, and I have had a few. The operation that led me to being on welfare was traumatic and depressing enough. The constant fear that I will not be able to provide for myself is affecting my physical and mental health. The recent fires and now the virus have affected us all. The feeling of hopelessness hangs over my head. Returning Newstart to the original $40 a day, I feel, will have many thinking, what is there to live for? If only to struggle to survive and be isolated more. That was what Julie had to say. A woman who has spent her life contributing to our economy, but now she has breast cancer. She is scared and she feels abandoned by our government. This is the human face, the reality of the government's dogged pursuit of $40 a day. Not quite the picture many people have, I am sure. Deputy Speaker, we are suffering through our first recession in 30 years. People like Julie are only set to increase, and the Morrison government wants to force them to live on $40 a day. It just isn't good enough, Deputy Speaker. Local people deserve better. When people aren't living on the poverty line, they can help keep our shops open. They can do more than barely scrape by, so they contribute more to our economy. If our shops are open, guess what? There are more jobs. Who would have thought? Supporting people when they're doing it tough actually helps people out of doing it tough. It contributes to our economy. It creates jobs. It creates opportunity. Benefit, benefit, benefit. Just what we need during a recession. So why is the government stubbornly refusing to do it? The budget was also an ample opportunity for the government to create jobs in my electorate. We could have invested in the Princess Highway, built the Mogo Adventure Trail Hub, built the Kiama Arts Precinct, built the much-needed Eurobodalla Integrated Emergency Management Centre, invested in social housing projects like the one at Bomaderry, and invested in our local hospitals in Milton, the Shoalhaven and the new Eurobodalla Hospital. All of these projects would have created new jobs and stimulated our regional economy. So why didn't the government invest in them when they had the chance? Regional areas left behind by a Liberal government that just doesn't seem to care. So, Deputy Speaker, it is for these reasons that I wholeheartedly support Labor's amendments to this bill. Local people on JobSeeker deserve the same certainty as people on JobKeeper. At the very least, and it really is the very least, those on JobSeeker should be able to continue receiving the coronavirus supplement until March, just like JobKeeper. We owe people like Julie that much. We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to change things for the most vulnerable in our community. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It is simply tragic that the Morrison government is wasting it. Wasting an opportunity to help pensioners, wasting an opportunity to pull people out of poverty, wasting an opportunity to create regional jobs on the South Coast. Waste. We can do better. I call on the government to listen to stories like these, take a good look around and decide to seize this opportunity for real change before it's too late.